Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Hare Krishna Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanuchari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanuchari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Mai ki, Shri Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudev ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai. So good evening, Hare Krishna to everyone and our listeners on Mayapur TV and ISKCON Sydney YouTube and Facebook. So today Ghanshyam Prabhu is unable to take this class, Caitanya Caritamrta reading. So he's asked me to read instead. I will be mostly reading, maybe a little few explanations here and there, but mostly reading. So we are reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, Antya Leela, chapter 5, and we are continuing from yesterday's shloks. I believe it's text 100. Yes. So Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Shri Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda, Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Okay. So, Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Dezatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bir Krishna Goswami Niti Namne Namo Hamsa Nikashaya Prabhupada Priyate Surita Shuddhinishtabhem Tasya Vakyanuvadine. So we are continuing just follow up, a sort of short summary of what has been covered so far. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has allocated Swarupa Damodar to screen test anything that comes through to him, and so Swarupa Damodar basically looks at anything, any kind of material that is being shared about Lord Chaitanya or anything about Vedic scriptures, and then he allows it to pass through to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu if he thinks that it is worth it. So there is this Brahman who has written a poetry. A Brahman who has written this poetry, and the poetry is, he has described it as something to do with Jagannath and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela. So he has combined the two. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to Jagannath Puri, and so he has decided to write a beautiful poetry in his mind. And he has convinced Bhagavan Acharya to hear it. Now Bhagavan Acharya is obviously a close associate Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Bhagavan Acharya reads this, hears his poetry, and is impressed. So he has decided to take it through to Swarup Damodar, and he is convincing Swarup Damodar to please hear it. Hear this poetry that has been written about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and about Jagannath, Lord Jagannath in Jagannath Puri. So let's see what has happened. Okay, so text 100. अदाउ तुम्ही सुना यदि तुम्हारा मान माने, पाचे महाप्रभु रे तबे करायमो श्रवणे. So the translation of that, first you hear it, and if it is acceptable to your mind, I shall request Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to hear it. So this is Bhagavan Acharya submitting this poetry to Swarupa Damodar Goswami and saying, please hear it. First you hear it. So, Swarupa kahe tumi gopa parama uddara, yeshe shastra sunita icha upaje tomara. So, translation of that, Swarupa Damodar Goswami replied, Dear Bhagavan Acharya, you are a very liberal cowherd boy. Sometimes the desire awakens within you to hear any kind of poetry. So he is actually telling Bhagavan Acharya that you will hear anything. Yadva tatva kavira vakye haya rasa bhasha, siddhanta viruddha sunite nahaya ulasha. So, in the writings of the so-called poets, there is generally a possibility of overlapping transcendental mellows. When the mellows thus go against the conclusive understanding, no one likes to hear such poetry. So what he is saying is mellows. Mellows mean taste. So mellows means the taste. For example, we have a taste of sabji, like, sometimes we like salty sabjis, sometimes we like sweet, sometimes we like sour. So he is saying that it will all combine. So the taste of our relationship with Krishna, whatever it might be, good or bad, it mixes. And so once it mixes or overlaps, then it goes against the conclusive understanding. In other words, it kind of changes the meaning. So no one likes to hear something that's been changed, or the rest, so it is either diluted or basically removed because there is overlapping of tastes. So Prabhupada's poetry says the Yadva Tattva Kavi refers to anyone who writes poetry without knowledge of how to do so. So here we are being told that even writing the Vedic poetry, we have got to be knowledgeable about it. Otherwise we might write something that is actually basically wrong, and it kind of removes the taste and the rasa. So writing poetry, especially poetry concerning Vaishnav conclusion, is very difficult. So you will see that any of the poetries that we have got in our Vedic scriptures has been basically chosen by Lord Krishna, the authors. Like for example, we've got the epic poem. You might guess it. What is the epic poem that's one of all time? The longest and the biggest one. It's the Ramayana. So many thousands. It's been written by Valmiki, and Valmiki was chosen actually. He was initiated by Narad Muni. So even if any poetry written by written for Vaishnavas, or even Lord Krishna, Lord Ram, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in any way, whatever is discussed, it's written by acharyas who have been specifically chosen. So no random person can basically come up and write a poetry and submit it. So it's actually very difficult. It's described here. So if one writes poetry without proper knowledge, there is every possibility that the mellows will overlap, and when this occurs, no learned or advanced Vaishnav would like to hear it. So Swarupa Damodar is actually explaining all this to Bhagavan Acharya. So you have to be, in that regard, when I was actually taking up Krishna consciousness, this is so many years ago, and I was listening to everything that was random. Basically, a lot of us do that. When we are learning to be Krishna conscious, we will listen to any kind of kirtan, we will listen to any kind of Vedic scriptures coming from anyone. So my guru had actually, because I was still new and I didn't know, so he guided me to say that be careful of even the kirtans you listen. So when he had actually come home one day, I had this Radha Krishna kirtan by somebody on commercial, and commercial. It was a commercial Hare Krishna kirtan, and as he entered, he didn't say anything, but he did. From the looks, he disliked that kirtan. So then that's when I asked. I said, "Is this kirtan not correct?" So then he said, "We must always or be guarded against what we listen to, and who's the singer, who's the script writer, so basically stick to Vaishnavas." So luckily at the time he was releasing some albums, and I had Prabhupada kirtans. So just stuck to, this is right in the beginning, because this is the time that our Bhakti Lata Bij is flourishing. And in order to protect our Bhakti Lata Bij, it is very important to safeguard it. And the only way we can safeguard it is by listening and hearing from qualified acharyas, qualified writers. So the safest thing for us is to stick to Srila Prabhupada. Even during chanting, so when we are chanting, we say the Panchatattva mantra, Naha mantra. We need to observe that we are chanting under the Panchatattva Panchatattva lords. So we don't really ask the demigods for help, in other words. We're asking for empowerment by Lord Nityananda, obviously by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We are asking Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur, and we are asking for help from Advaita Acharya. So, and obviously we are taking our Guru's name, and that's basically enough. So we need empowerment from Vaishnavas and Lord Krishna's associates and representatives. Those who are initiated when we chant, basically we've got our entire Guru Parampara behind us. Because when we get initiated, we get beads from our spiritual master who has chanted on those beads. So he's transferred the empowerment of chanting. He's transferred certain potencies from himself to the disciple. And that's when we chant with a lot of strength and power and potency. And behind him stands Prabhupada. So Prabhupada gives his potency to our spiritual master. And behind Srila Prabhupada is the Lion Guru. Who's the Lion Guru? The Narsimha Guru. That's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we have got a whole line in the parampara behind the chanting. So it's really very important. So this poetry, Swarupa Damodar, is actually cautioning Bhagwan Acharya to be careful of what kind of poem you are listening to, because it will have the mellows overlapping. And to be honest, when I was listening to this class by my Guru Maharaj, he was saying the rasa bhasa, the overlapping of these mellows, it cannot be measured or even analyzed by ordinary people. An acharya can even say, well, is this rasa bhasa, is it even acceptable? Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? We cannot. We're not qualified to even know that. So it says here that when this occurs, no learned or advanced Vaishnava will like to hear it. Rasa bhasa yara nahi ka vichara, bhakti siddhanta sindhu nahi paya para. So the so-called poet who has no knowledge of transcendental mellows and the overlapping transcendental mellows cannot cross the ocean of conclusions of devotional service. In other words, they're actually not only will they not cross the ocean, right? They will not get liberated or get pure devotional service. Not only that, they might commit such an offense that they will go to hell. They could. It's so we've got to be very careful what we write and who writes it and what we listen to. So Vyakarana nahi jane na jane alankara, natak alankara jnana nahi kayahara, Krishna lila vanite na jane se chara, visheshe durgama e chaitanya vihara. So the translation of that, a poet who does not know the grammatical regulative principles, who is unfamiliar with metaphorical ornaments, especially those employed in drama, and who does not know how to present the pastimes of Lord Krishna is condemned. Moreover, the pastimes of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu are especially difficult to understand. So those of you who are attending the Caitanya Caritamrta class, you'll know how difficult it is to understand. So it's got to be read by somebody who has got a very good understanding. At the moment, my Guru Maharaj is actually taking the Caitanya Caritamrta classes, and he's sort of 1 week ahead of these shloks, about 6-7 days. So I actually had to I went back to listen to the class where he had read this, and this was like 6 days ago. He had actually read this. There are many attendees, and there's always so many questions because the Caitanya Caritamrta is a little difficult to understand. And here Swarup Damodar is actually putting it in black and white that it is difficult to understand. So, Krishna Leela, Gaura Leela, Sekare Varnana, Gaura Pada Padma, Yanra Haya Pranadhana. One who has accepted the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu as his life and soul can describe the pastimes of Lord Krishna or the pastimes of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Gramya Kavira Kavidba Sunite Haya Dukha Vidagda Atmiya Vakya Sunite Haya Sukha. Hearing the poetry of a person who has no transcendental knowledge and who writes about the relationships between man and woman simply causes unhappiness, whereas hearing the words of a devotee fully absorbed in ecstatic love causes greater happiness. I mean, this is just a basic principle. A person who has happiness is only a person who can spread happiness. A person who has unhappiness cannot spread unhappiness. So a person who is in ecstatic love of Lord Krishna, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, can only impart that. So, Gramya Kavi refers to a poet or writer, such as the authors of the novels and other fiction who write about only the relationships between man and woman. Vidagda Atmika Vakya. Let me see if I've got the right page. Yep. However, refers to words such as written by a devotee who fully understand pure devotional service. Such devotees who follow the parampara system are sometimes described as sajatis yasyaya snigdha, or pleasing to the same class of people. Only the poetry and other writings of such devotees are accepted with great happiness by devotees. So basically it's got to be bona fide. And what are our bona fide scriptures? Our bona fide scriptures are those endorsed by Srila Prabhupada. So you look at the author of any books that you read, and should be endorsed by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So Rupaye che dvinataka kariya che arambhe sunite ananda bare yara mukha bhande. The standard for writing dramas has been set by Rupa Goswami. If a devotee hears the introductory portions of his 2 dramas, they enhance his transcendental pleasure. Bhagwan Acharya kahe suna ek bara, tumi sunela bhala manda janive vichara. So, Bhagwan Acharya, even after being cautioned by Swarup Damodar, is still trying to convince Swarupa Damodar Goswami. He's saying, despite the explanation of Swarup Damodar, Bhagwan Acharya requested, please hear the drama once. If you hear it, you can consider whether it is good or bad. Despite that. So, Duitina Dina Acharya Agraha Karila Tanra Agrahe Swarupera Sunita Icha Haila. So, the translation, for 2 or 3 days, Bhagwan Acharya continually asked Swarupa Damodar Goswami to hear the poetry. Because of these, his repeated requests, Swarupa Damodar Goswami wanted to hear the poetry written by the Brahmana from Bengal. So this Brahmana was from Bengal, and obviously Swarup Damodar Goswami wasn't really willing to hear it in the beginning, but 2 or 3 days of pestering from Bhagwan Acharya kind of broke him down, so he finally agreed. So, Savalana Swarupa Goshani Sunite Vivasila Tabe Se Kavi Nandi Shloka Padila. So, Swarup Damodar Goswami sat down with other devotees to hear the poetry. And then the poet began to read the introductory verse. Well, get ready for a show. So, Vikacha Kamala Netre Sri Jagannatha Samne Kanakaruchiri Hatmani Atmamya Prapanna Prakriti Jadam Ashesham Chetayan Avirashid Sadishatu Tava Bhagavam Krishna Caitanya Devaha. So, the translation of the first lines of the poetry, this is what the poet has written. So, if you are listening, if you've got the book in front of you, wherever you might be, try to analyze the first impression you get, your first feeling you get. I will read it out. The first lines: the Supreme Personality of Godhead has assumed a golden complexion and has become the soul of the body named Lord Jagannath, whose blooming lotus eyes are widely expanded. Thus he has appeared in Jagannath Puri and brought dull matter to life. May that Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya Deva bestow upon you all good fortune. What does it suggest to you? Does it sound good? There's only one Prabhu sitting here. Maybe I can ask him, does that sound okay? You don't know? What did the first feeling you got when you read that? Looks good? Elaborate? Yes. When I first heard that, this is because Guru Maharaj was reading it, my Guru Maharaj, I was horrified. You know why? Because even though Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has golden complexion, that part was wonderful, but it says here that he is the soul and body of Jagannath. Well, we are the soul and we are covered with body because we are material beings. Is Krishna or Lord Chaitanya, can he be the body and soul of anybody? And especially Jagannath, Lord Jagannath is Sri Krishna Chaitanya. They are one and the same. So how can they be one body and a different body and a soul? They are the same. Spiritual beings, the body and the soul is the one, it's non-different. And it is not like a material body or soul that is differentiated. So when I was first like, hey, wait a minute, is Sri Chaitanya being like glorified above Lord Jagannath? How can they be possible? They are one and the same. It's like saying Krishna has come and he's the body and soul of Lord Ram. Can we say that Lord Krishna is the body and soul of Lord Ram? No, they are the same. One and the same, non-different. And then this poetry goes on to say that he has appeared in Jagannath Puri and brought dull matter to life. What is the dull matter? Is he saying Lord Jagannath is dull matter and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought life? We say Jagannath Swami Nayanapatagami Bhavatume. We are begging Lord Jagannath to be the object of our vision. He is Lord Krishna. How can he be dull? It's a saying that Puri was dull before, it was matter. In that sense, my spiritual master really explained this at length. He said, Lord Krishna is not matter. Lord Krishna, the deity, it's not matter at all. So how can Jagannath be matter? It's not. It's spiritual. And I think I can spend at least a little bit more in explaining this. In that regard, there was this question, asked by someone. They said, well, when you install the deities of Krishna, does that mean Krishna is in there? Is it one and the same? Obviously, yes. So we've got Gopinath standing here. He is made of marble or whatever materials he's made of. But that's not Krishna. The materials are not Krishna is in there. He's Sakshat Krishna. There's no difference between Lord Krishna and the deity. He's not meta. He's spiritual. He's transcendental. So, Gurudev was saying that Lord Krishna is not just present as, in his own form, original form. He is present in the same form, one and the same, non-different in his deity also. And that also in the picture. He said even before you install the deities, you've got the deities, somebody has made them, and even before you install them, Krishna is already present. And Krishna is already present in his pictures. So this, in the mornings, especially in Brahma Muhurat, we come here and we do the chanting. Sometimes I stay at all the photos. He's actually there. We've got one Mataji who makes these garlands, and she comes and she looks at Laddu Gopal, the Makanchor over there, before she starts her garlands every day. It's actually Lord Krishna speaking to her from the photo. He's present there. We think it's just a picture, but it's not. It's very sacred. So this is the explanation that my Guru Maharaj gave. So this poetry that this Bengali Brahman is writing is saying that Lord Chaitanya has put life in Jagannath, deity. He's not made of wood. It's not wood. He is Lord Krishna himself. So, and then he expanded a little bit more on that explanation. If you are interested, and I was definitely interested to know more about the presence of Krishna, where else is he present? And our spiritual master, because our spiritual master is a spiritual transcendental being, he said spiritual masters are present even in their pictures. So, for example, we've got Srila Prabhupada. He is a deity. He's our spiritual master, right? He's a guru. He's Jagat Guru. So he's actually present in his deity. And if we have a photo of a spiritual master, and actually that's why I keep not only my spiritual master's photo on my altar, but Jayapataka Swami had requested that he wanted to visit my home. And I thought, what's the best way to have him visit my home? I have to ask Ghanshyam Prabhu to provide a photo. So he provided a photo of Jayapataka Swami. So he's there in his picture in my home. So is Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So any photo of spiritual master, they're present. This is straight from my spiritual master's class. I'm not making it up. After that, then they arise this question. So if we've got pictures, and if we have to dispose of them, because there's some calendars, right? We have calendars with Krishna's pastimes, or we have newsletters, pamphlets, flyers. We've got Caitanya Mahaprabhu, we've got Rath Yatra. So how do we dispose if he is present in his pictures? They're sacred items. Do we just throw them in the rubbish? We can't do that. Even this garland I'm wearing, you will see, this is Radha Gopinath's garland, which I've been waiting for a long time. I'm so glad I've been given this class so I can wear the garland. So what do we do? They actually they're disposed of very carefully. There's a separate garbage bin. Even with the photos and pictures say that they are calendars or newsletters. Even paraphernalia. He was saying that we should wrap it up, have it wrapped up and throw it separately, but preferably burn them. But it's not always practical to burn them. We are not allowed to light fires in Australia, so there's definitely no for us. We can't. We'll have bush fires and we'll be fire starters. We'll be arrested actually for starting fires. So we can't really have fires. So in that regard, we've got to wrap it up separately and then dispose it carefully. So then the question arises, well, the garbage man comes and then he takes it and it's all mixed there. All kinds of things are there. So he said, you've got to pray to Krishna and you've got to be practical. We can't really be so fanatic, but still we've got to offer our respects. That's the whole point, is we offer respects. So then the question arose, somebody said, the Harinam Chadar, we wear the Harinam Chadar with the Hare Krishna printed on it. So is Krishna present in the printed names? Like we've got the board written, we've got, say I write Hare Krishna Mahamantra on the board. Is Krishna present there? The answer Gurudev gave was interesting. He said, yes. He is present, even the script written Hare Krishna Mahamantra, so the chadar that we wear. So he said, try not to go to the bathroom with those things, with the pictures of Krishna. Even when you have the tattoo, some people have tattoos. I was thinking of getting Jagannath tattoo on my shoulder. And actually he clarified that for me. And I'm not going to get Jagannath tattoo on my shoulder anymore because I always pray to Jagannath, be visible, always be there for me. I can see you. So, but Gurudev said no, because it's on your body and you go to the bathroom and you do all kinds of things. So you shouldn't really have. He said, I don't encourage. Even in our chanting bead bag, we have photos of Krishna, and it's so sacred that he said we'll just have a plain chanting bag because your chanting bag with the photo of Krishna, and it's true because I had actually a first-hand experience of that. I was chanting on the bag with Lord Jagannath's photo there, and I had a dream about that. The Jagannath on my chanting bag became alive. And he was as big as the entire creation, a huge form. So Gurudev said, try as best as possible to have a plain chanting bag, rather than, because when we offer danvats, we kind of drag the bag on the floor and things like that. And so then the question came, how about the books? The books that I'm reading right now, does that have Krishna in it? Yes, the answer is yes. So he related a story about Srila Prabhupada. This is quite interesting, so I thought it's worth mentioning because a lot of us probably have this question. How to respect the books? Are they sacred? Yes, they are. And the story, he said, Prabhupada was so particular about the books because he said, Lord Krishna is in our books. And actually, I had a dream also, and in that Lord Shiva told me, he said, because I was searching for Lord Balram. I said, where is Balram? We are always calling Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Where is Balram? I always had this question, we are saying the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is present. Lord Balram is there, but he's always placed in the background sort of thing. So, where is Balram? And then Lord Shiva came and said, oh, Balram is present in the books you read. And I thought, what books do I read? Well, that's the Srila Prabhupada books. And Lord Balram is the original spiritual master. So whatever training we are getting, Vedic scriptures, bona fide Vedic scriptures, Lord Balram is present there. So then Gurudev kind of confirmed it in his class. He said, Lord Krishna and, all his representatives, all expansions of Lord Krishna, if the books written about them, they're present. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Caitanya Caritamrta, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is present in the Caitanya Caritamrta. He's present, which is really amazing when you think about it. So then he related this story about Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada was so particular that he did not like to see even the books placed wrongly or upside down. What to speak of dropping the book? He said, if you drop the book or it hits your leg, you have to offer obeisances. He said, I don't know how many obeisances you have to pay, but he said 100 obeisances to the book because it's Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada didn't even want the books to be placed upside down on the shelf. So that's how particular it was. So the Harinam Chadar we wear also. We've got to be very careful not to take it to the bathroom or things like that. Then somebody asked in that same class, how about the chanting? Because we are chanting, right? And Lord Krishna is present. And take him to the bathroom. And Gurudev said, actually, we can chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra anywhere under any circumstances because for one basic reason is we could die anytime. And a lot of people die in the bathroom. If you read the statistics, there's many people who actually give up their lives in the bathroom. They die there. So he said, under all circumstances, we must chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Obviously, we'll be very careful, but I guess we can sing Hare Krishna Mahamantra while we're having a shower. I don't know. I never do that, but it's possible. So that was a little bit about the sacred items. Actually, it was quite lengthy, but it's worth mentioning because a lot of us would have that question, for those of us who are listening. So, text 113, Shloka suni sarvaloka tahare vakhane, Swarupa kahe shloka karaha vyakhanyane. So translation, when everyone present heard the verse, they all commended the poet. But Swarupa Damodar Goswami requested him, kindly explain this verse. Text 114. Kavi kahe Jagannatha Sundara Sharira, Caitanya Goshani Shariri Mahadhira. So the poet said, Lord Jagannath is a most beautiful body, and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is exceptionally grave, is the owner of that body. Can you just imagine? He's saying that Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the owner of Lord Jagannath's body. That is such a big offense. We can't say that. Shariri refers to a person who owns the sharira or the body, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra na muyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. That's Bhagavad Gita 2.13. For the ordinary living being in material existence, there is division or distinction between the body and the owner of the body. So this is the important part. In spiritual existence, however, there is no such distinction. For the body is the owner himself, and the owner is the body itself. In spiritual existence, everything must be spiritual. Therefore, there is no distinction between the body and its owner. Krishna, his body, the soul, he is one. There is no distinction. Nobody can own the body. He's basically telling, the poet is saying that Sri Chaitanya owns the body of Lord Jagannath. They are one and the same. Lord Krishna's body is Krishna. We, obviously, our body belongs to Lord Krishna. It doesn't belong to us. Our body can be sad, but it's a material body. It's not spiritual. It's not even eternal. It's going to dwindle. So this body that he is like describing is so shocking because he is putting material context to Lord Krishna and Lord Jagannath, and he is kind of divided the two. They are one and the same. Lord Krishna, his body, the sound vibration, all one. No distinction. It's spiritual. It's not subject to material laws like our body. So he's basically subjected Lord Jagannath's body to material laws and principles, which is a huge offense. That's why it says, if you don't have any knowledge, don't bother writing poetry. And that actually goes to preachers also. Like we are trying to preach to somebody, we got to have the knowledge, the correct knowledge. So it's got to come from parampara. That is why, excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat. But we were told when we were being trained for Diksha, initiation, listen to lectures from ISKCON devotees, obviously, acharyas especially, because they have the knowledge. In other words, if one is not initiated, even though if they are under guru, aspiring, and they are under mentors, it is probably not a good idea for them to be preachers and sit on the asana and speak even. There are many temples who have this rule. No initiation, no experience, no classes. The reason is that there can be, just like they say, overlapping of mellows, the nectar is missing. The actual knowledge is missing, and the parampara is not behind them. The empowerment is not there yet. Because when we do the yagna, we actually burn our karma, and our guru gives us the empowerment. So we don't have any reaction like past, whatever that we've done in this life or past lives. So they say that this is some of the rules, and I kind of agree with that. For one reason is that initiated disciples, they are true representatives obviously of Srila Prabhupada. They will have the empowerment to preach and impart knowledge that is not mixed. So you got to be an expert. So as wherever possible, take up initiation. and then preach, and then take classes. Not that I'm saying I'm initiated, so I'm better than others. It's not like that. In fact, I think I'm here because of Gopinath. I've tried to go away many times, but Gopinath keeps bringing me back. So I'm under Gopinath's mercy. But to be honest, I do not claim to know Caitanya Caritamrta that well either. So it is advisable that because this poet didn't really have the knowledge, he wrote all these poetries without even knowing what he was saying. So we will go on to the next text. Sahaje jada jagatera chetana karaite Nila chale Mahaprabhu haila avirbhute. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared here in Neelachal, Jagannath Puri, to spiritualize the entire dull material world. 116. Sunya sabara haila anandita mana dukhapana swarupa kahe sakroda vachana. Hearing this, everyone present was greatly happy, but Swarup Damodar, who was very unhappy, began to speak in great anger. So this is where Swarup Damodar becomes really angry with the poet. Are mukha aparanara kaile sarvanasha Duita ishvare tora nahika vishvasa. You are a fool, he said. You've brought ill fortune upon yourself, for you have no knowledge of the existence of the two lords, Jagannath Deva and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, nor have you faith in them. So, Purananda Chit Swarupa Jagannathaya Raya Tanre Kaile Jada Nashvara Prakrita Kaya. Lord Jagannath is completely spiritual and in full of transcendental bliss, but you have compared him to a dull, thus destructible body composed of the inert external energy of the Lord. If one thinks that the form of Lord Jagannath is an idol made of wood, he immediately brings ill fortune into his life. According to the direction of the Padma Purana, Archaye Vishnu Shiladihi Yasya Va Naraki Shaha, thus one who thinks that the body of Lord Jagannath is made of matter and who distinguishes between Lord Jagannath's body and soul is condemned. For he is an offender, a pure devotee who knows the science of Krishna consciousness makes no distinction between Lord Jagannath and his body. He knows that they are identical, just as Lord Krishna and his soul are one and the same. When one's eyes are purified by devotional service performed on the spiritual platform, one can actually envision Lord Jagannath and his body as being completely spiritual. The advanced devotee does not see the worshipable deity to have a soul within a body like an ordinary human being. There is no distinction between the body and the soul of Lord Jagannath, for Lord Jagannath is Sachidananda Vigraha. Just as the body of Krishna is Sachidananda Vigraha, there is actually no difference between Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But the ignorant poet from Bengal applied a material distinction to the body of Lord Sri Jagannath. Purnat Sad Aishvara Chaitanya Swayam Bhagwan Tanre Kaili Kshudra Jiva Spulinga Samana. So here Damodar Swami is really angry and really chastising that poet. You have calculated Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in 6 opulences, to be on the level of ordinary living being. Instead of knowing him as a supreme fire, you've accepted him as a spark. So, Srila Prabhupada has actually given a really long purport here, but in a nutshell, I can say that whenever, because we, in his pranam mantra, we say, Paschatya Desa Tarine, we actually say, I'll say the whole thing. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharitane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. Shunyavadi, he is here to remove the voidism and materialism. So whenever somebody, this is Gurudev, he had actually said, we are on text number, what text number are we? 119. So, Prabhupada, he will actually be very, very heavy and angry. He gets on those people who are promoting voidism, materialism, Mayavadis, or anyone who is deviating. He gets very angry. So, and he doesn't allow those kind of things happening. So, we might have, in the ISKCON, people who are coming from other religious bodies, and they want to preach. It's very, very unacceptable, unless they're from a bona fide sampradaya. Like there are 4 bona fide sampradayas, but Srila Prabhupada is extremely heavy, and he gets very angry with anyone who is spreading voidism or materialism. So basically this poet, because he had placed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath as an ordinary human being having a soul and a body, basically it's like materialism, and he is like deviating. They are not material, they're spiritual, and the body and the soul and the Lord is all one. There's no distinction. It's not separate. So Srila Prabhupada actually has given a really long purport here, and it's quite heavy. Basically Lord Swarup Damodar, then he continues, because you have committed an offense to Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you will attain a hellish destination. Basically, Swarup Damodar told the poet, the Bengali poet, go to hell. You will attain a hellish destination. He basically said, you've done this, go to hell. You do not know how to describe the absolute truth, but nevertheless you have tried to do so, therefore you must be condemned. The Brahman poet from Bengal was an offender in the estimation of Swarup Damodar Goswami, for although the poet had no knowledge of the absolute truth, he had nevertheless tried to describe it. My goodness. So actually I didn't have the knowledge, but when I heard this poem, the first lines, I thought there's something very wrong about that. Because Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are the same. So how can one how can one make the other dull and, bring life? That's all wrong. So you do not know how to describe the absolute truth, but nevertheless you have tried to do so, therefore you must be condemned. So the purport, Brahman poet from Bengal was an offender in the estimation of Swarup Damodar Goswami, for although the poet had no knowledge of the absolute truth, he had nevertheless tried to describe it. So don't do what you cannot do, basically. If you don't have the knowledge, don't do it. The Bengali poet was an offender to both Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath, because he had made a distinction between Lord Jagannath's body and soul, and because he had indicated that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was different from Lord Jagannath. He had committed offenses to them both. They are one and the same. It's Lord Krishna, just in a different mood. Lord Jagannath is in the mood of separation from gopis. So that's why he's going around with big eyes. He's in the mood of separation from his gopis, Vrindavan. That's why they have the Rath Yatras. They put him in the Rath and try to pull him back to Vrindavan Dham. So he's just in a different mood, but he's one and the same, non-different. Excuse me. He has committed offenses to them both. Atatva Gyan refers to one who has no knowledge of the absolute truth, or who worships his own body as the supreme personality of Godhead. If an ahangropakshaka mayavadi, a person engaged in fruitive activities, or a person interested only in sense gratification, describes the absolute truth, he immediately becomes an offender. So those people who are doing all kinds of things, that's why it is said that we should actually listen to classes from devotees, is because they are following the four regulative principles. And they are observing the rules and regulations. They are taking prasad, they are listening to regular Srimad Bhagavatam, they are taking guidance from the spiritual master. So those who are not following those rules and regulations shouldn't really be preaching. They shouldn't be talking about the absolute truth, because they won't have the knowledge. So Araika Kariyacha Parama Pramada Deha Dehi Bheda Ishvare Kaila Aparadha. You are in complete illusion, for you have distinguished between the body and soul of His Lordship, Lord Jagannath, or Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. That is a great offense. When one differentiates between the body and soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he immediately becomes an offender. So he immediately becomes an offender, because the living entities on the material world are generally covered by material bodies, and the body and the soul of ordinary human being cannot be identical. But we are not gods, so we can have a different body and a soul. There is distinction between our body and our soul, but not Krishna. Krishna doesn't age. He doesn't even have a material body like us. The body and the soul of an ordinary human being cannot be identical. The Supreme Lord bestows the fruits of one's activities, for He is the Lord of the results of fruitive action. He is also the cause of causes and is the master of material energy. Therefore, He is supreme. An ordinary living being, however, in his material condition, enjoys the results of his own fruitive activities and therefore falls under their influence. So, even in the liberated stage of Brahma Bhuta identification, he engages in rendering service to his Lordship. Thus, there are distinctions between an ordinary human being and the Supreme Lord. Karmis and Jnanis who ignore this distinction are offenders against the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An ordinary human being is prone to subjugated by the material energy, whereas Lordship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Krishna or Lord Jagannath, is always the master of material energy and is therefore never subject to the influence. His Lordship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is unlimited spiritual identity, never to be broken. Whereas the consciousness of living entity is limited and fragmented. So our situation is very, very limited and very fragmented. We can't even compare. How can he compare Lord Chaitanya's body to our body? That's a huge offense. Huge. So, going right to the bottom, even though Krishna appears like an ordinary human being, he is never subjected to the rules and regulations of the material world. He is Swarat, or fully independent. He can appear in the material world, but contrary to the offensive conclusion of the Mayavadi school, he has no material body. In this connection, one may again refer to the above mentioned verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.11.38, Eta dishanam ishashya prakriti stopi dad gunai na yujyate sadatmastair yada buddhis tat ashraya. That means the Supreme Person has an eternal spiritual body. If one tries to distinguish between the body and the soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he commits an offense. Let me just see what this next shlok is and then we can stop there. No, we'll stop here. So, Ghanshyam Prabhu, if he continues in the next class, it will be text 122. So, we conclude. If you have any comments, I'm not really taking any questions, but if you have anything to say. Yeah. Yes, there is. Let's see, let me see. Do you know the story of Paundraka in the Lord Krishna's pastimes? He was trying to pretend to be Krishna, Lord Krishna himself. And he had done all this, he had attached here and he had the conch and everything. So, and he was offending Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna was kind of angry with him, right? So that was one mellow, anger. He'd come And he was quite angry because he was offending Lord Krishna. But when Lord Krishna saw him, he started laughing at him because he was ridiculous. So the anger and the funny bit, the laughter kind of overlapped, But that's Lord Krishna. It's a spiritual thing. That was acceptable. But we can't, in a material sense, that's spiritual overlapping. That was the example that my guru had actually given in the class. But he had given like our rasas. We are neutral, like we are in a Shanti ras, like we are neutral. Then we can't really mix it up with something else. It kind of becomes very material, in other words. That's kind of overlapping the mellows, like he had used it, but there is a distinction definitely. But in Lord Krishna's pastimes, that was one example he had given, but he'd also said it's only the acharyas who can actually say whether that overlapping is a good or bad thing. Does that answer the question? Yes. No. That was well, if you look at it, the pastime, that's transcendental pastime for Lord Krishna. But if an ordinary person does it, maybe Pondraka, it's not really transcendental. If we try to, go in front of the deities and say, all kinds of, like Pondraka, we start doing that, that's a huge offense. We can't do that. It's not transcendental. It's foolish. So we should never imitate anyone. Nor can we cannot display those things with Krishna at the moment because we have not attained our spiritual body. Let's put it that way. So right now we are in a material body and we are learning how to perform devotional service. We are learning. We are in a training. So we cannot artificially do those activities that will make Krishna angry or make Krishna happy. We are actually trying to please him. We are all trying. We don't know if we are actually pleasing him or not. But once we attain our spiritual body, just like Yashoda Mai, she's displaying motherly love quite openly, unlimitedly. She's in a spiritual world, she's in a spiritual body. She can do that. We can't do that. We are in training. We can express our affection in our worship to Krishna, to say, you like our son, you like our baby. But really, we are in a material world. We haven't actually acquired our spiritual position or spiritual body, so we cannot do that. It is not transcendental. It is not transcendental. We are in training. Yep. So, okay, that concludes our class. Thank you for listening. Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai.